All right, welcome back. This is Four Balls Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andrew Stevens, alongside
Nathan Perry.
Yep. Nate, how you doing? You all jacked up on some
Good.
Coke here?
I'm on quite a bit of caffeine. Not a whole lot of sleep last night. You know,
Mm.
we're doing a little sleep regression situation right now with my daughter. It's not been good. So.
Ooh. Our big topic today is going to be LIV Golf, right?
Yes, big announcement today in the golf world.
Just came out, right? A couple minutes ago.
Yes, they are officially denied official world golf ranking points by the OWGR.
They're playing for cash, and that's it.
Yep, which is pretty interesting. I have a hard time getting up for the LIV Golf Tour. It's not something I'm against. I mean, I'm a little salty that we don't get to see the best players in the world play on the same stage as often, and that's largely because of LIV Golf.
Now, the funny thing is, one could make the argument, you just said some of the best players in the world. Well, how do we know if they're the best players in the world right now if they're not getting, world ranking points? Now, I'm on the side, personally, of, it's a little amateur hour over there, and it probably won't be around for much longer, in my opinion. But to your point, right? How do you identify those best players in the world now?
It's difficult. I mean, the whole league just seems kind of like an exhibition. It's a shame because there are some great golfers out there. I mean, there's no denying that Brooks Koepka and Cam Smith are some of the best players in the world. But how do you rank them playing against 47 other guys and 54 holes, a shotgun start?
Right. How do you quantify it, right?
Right. And as far as the criteria is concerned, I don't understand the argument that there needs to be no cut and it needs to be 72 holes because, well, there's no cut at Tiger's event. It's a separate issue. That absolutely shouldn't get world ranking points, in my opinion. But the one thing I can't get past is every other major tour, every tour that has OWGR points has a qualifying system to get to that tour. When you just get asked and offered a lot of money to play on a tour, you didn't go through the steps to get to that level. Now, there's obviously some high-profile guys on there, but, I mean, how do you judge how good Brooks Koepka's playing when he's beaten Peter Uihlein, who has proven time and time again, before he was on LIV, that he was not good enough to hold his PGA Tour card? Yeah. Peter Uihlein's obviously a good player, but it's when you just get asked to play in something and it's totally inconsequential golf, it's really hard to
it's fairly arbitrary.
Right?
So it's kind of pick and choose, like Red Rover almost, right?
Right.
These guys happen to be the lucky ones who, got picked first and got a boatload of cash. The interesting thing I think in this situation is, you've got all the tours that are recognized by the OWGR. They went through that process, right? Those steps to get accredited, and that process was lengthy. I think human nature is to, we're poor at evaluating length of time or scale, right? And LIV's only been around for less than 2 years, right? This whole thing really, they just started pulling on the lawnmower and the engine caught fire and over in London last year, right? And off we go. Let's start running tournaments. The challenge is it just has not been long enough. They have not gone through the process like every other tour. They're asking basically to cut in line and to move the process along. It's like TSA pre-check, right? Yeah. They want to skip everybody else and not go through the same process. So the challenge I think with this is I understand that why they want those points. They want to be able to play in other events and qualify for other majors and things like that and continue to get their brand out there. The most fascinating thing about this whole thing, again, in my opinion, they're not going to be around in another year or two. But they're proceeding down this path as if, their next stop is the moon. Yeah. And it's like, guys, you just got off the ground and it's not going anywhere. The mission is not making it to its final destination. Right. This whole
Do you think it's going to be, LIV's just going to be
gone?
Really?
Gone.
They've got unlimited money, and
Oh, they sure do, but that money's going to be switched real quickly, right to the back of the PGA Tour. That's the kicker, I think. But they're acting as if, like Greg Norman, they're acting as if this is just, how it's going to be for eternity. Like we're going to continue to march on, and we're going to get bigger and better and stronger. May there be some sort of version of these elevated, showcase type events in the PGA Tour's future? Possibly. It's hard. Everyone wants to speculate, especially in golf media. Wants to speculate what's coming down the road. There are a couple of dozen people in the world who know what that looks like right now. they've got a late December deadline to come up with more details for this blend of the PIF and the PGA Tour. That has not been ironed out yet, and I have not seen any real pressing details on it other than what we've heard so far earlier this spring, right? Or early summer. So there are a handful of folks who know what that is likely to look like. They did a pretty good job keeping the secret, keeping the lid on it earlier in the year. My guess is they're doing a pretty good job keeping a tight lid this time around too.
Well, let's say it is around, and what's going to be most fascinating to me is the guys. So Brooks won a major this year. Cam Smith won the Open last year. They're in to all the majors for what, 5 years? Mm-hmm. Patrick Reed is in the Masters in perpetuity, but the other guys who are high-level players now have nowhere to get points.
Right.
Like, what's Joaquin Niemann? Is he just not going to be around in a couple years if LIV continues to be like, we're talking high-level players that haven't earned their exemptions prior to getting on LIV, and Brooks kind of proved this year that if he only plays in the majors and he does well enough in those, which he probably will, the guy's a machine in majors, he'll still be able to play in the big events plus his little side gig with LIV. But what's going to happen to everybody else?
Yeah,
There's just going to be a no man's land.
You only have a handful of players who are qualified for those other majors, right? DJ has his lifetime at the Masters, and then he's got between 5 and 10 years at the other majors, based on his November Masters win a couple of years ago. You've got Phil, who did not play in the Masters last year, but no, he played last year. Year before he didn't play. Sorry.
Yes.
But you've got those guys. Their exemptions in the other events are going to start running out as well. Not that Phil has a long runway, but it's coming eventually. You got a major champion in Louis Oosthuizen, who I still think is one of the best ball strikers in the world.
Yeah, but
he's
going to be nowhere. He's going to have nowhere to play.
Nowhere to play, right? Yeah. And I honestly miss seeing that guy probably the most, besides Cam Smith at Augusta, watching him get around.
So let's say LIV does go away, and then these players get allowed to make their way back onto the tour. They're not going to just instantly be able to play in these events. I mean, we're looking at Korn Ferry Tour could be lit in a couple years. If Louis Oosthuizen wants to play back on the PGA Tour, he's got to go through Korn Ferry, right? I mean, that would be incredible.
If I were a Fortune 500 company right now, or maybe Fortune 501 or higher, I might be looking at the sponsorship of the Korn Ferry Tour going forward.
Right.
You might get some pretty decent bang for your buck.
Right.
In terms of talent coming on there pretty soon. Because that's the only way they're going to be able to play their way back. They can't get status in most other spots. So fascinating.
Speaking of Korn Ferry Tour, we wrapped up the Korn Ferry Finals this weekend. I find that to be one of the most compelling tournaments of the year as a golf sicko that I am, because these guys are truly playing for their jobs. The guys that made it to the finals still have Korn Ferry status the next year, but it's a massive promotion to get to the big stage. I mean, these guys, it's like any other minor league sports, right? They're playing for nothing compared to the big show. And I'm not arguing that they should, but it is just some incredible drama, and not a good week for our boy Shad Tootin out there.
No. I will say, as much as a golf sicko as I am as well, I spent my Sunday watching F1 and football. The occasional switch over to see a few shots at Victoria National, but not much. But tell us exactly what happened.
So they were doing lift, clean, and place in the fairway. I believe it was on the 15th hole. Shad.
Complete BS rule, by the way. Just totally made up.
Right. Well, they're breeding them for the PGA Tour, because if there's a chance of rain in the forecast, they're doing lift, clean, and place. Separate issue, but come on.
Why could you possibly have a speck of dirt on your ball?
So he lifts, cleans, and place within the rules, and afterwards, apparently his ball rolls. We're talking like a centimeter, and then he puts it back. Well, the ball's already in play. So he was informed. He finished just inside the top 30. He was informed afterwards that he would incur a 2-shot penalty, bumping him out of the top 30. Total heartbreaker. Meanwhile, Rafael Campos gets in, who was out for an hour and a half after he finishes. Missed a very makeable putt on 18, thought that did it. He's another year on Korn Ferry, and then he gets informed that there was this penalty, and now he's back in. So you had this, that's what I love about it, just crazy waves of emotion. He was totally broken up after the round. It was a very heartfelt interview. Didn't hear anything from Shad. Can't imagine he's particularly happy at the moment. Is it an unfortunate rule? Yeah, but I mean, a rule's a rule, right? And I don't think he certainly didn't mean anything by it. It was just a total brain lapse, and it's going to cost the guy playing on the big stage next year. So just gut-wrenching stuff, and also a feel-good story on the other side of that. Where there's heartbreak, there's always somebody on the other side of it, I suppose.
There's, since Q school, the gauntlet that it went away. I think we've missed out on some of those best stories. And again, I think it does target it is sort of the golf sicko, right? The person who just can't get enough of it. It's the same with any sport, really, right? The guys who are watching the NFL combines, religiously, that sort of thing. Where you love all the detail and the stories behind it, and everyone loves an underdog, right? But watching these guys try their damnedest to make it to the top, it's compelling entertainment. It really is. Both the victories and sometimes the most incredible defeats, right? Yeah. Just down in flames type of scenarios. How do you think back about hitting a 2-foot putt, bouncing out of the back lip of a cup, dead perfect straight putt, and you end up missing by a shot or two.
Right.
It's brutal to watch, and we haven't had that sort of drama in golf really since the end of Q school, right? We get it once a year with the Corn Ferry Finals for sure, but even there, it's not quite the leap and bound that you had to go through to get your tour card back in the day.
But one thing that I think's been largely successful, maybe it doesn't make for as many of those heartbreak stories when you do the traditional first, second stage, literally just pay your money and try to make your way to the tour, which was cool. I think where the tour had fallen short in previous years is not having a pathway to get the best college players to the tour soon enough. PGA Tour, I think, has really nailed it with that. You've got the Cootie brothers both made it, twin brothers making it on the PGA Tour. I mean, what are the odds of that? That's insane. I don't know if there's been 2 twins that have made it on the tour before. But these players have proven now with how good college golf has become that they get out on tour and they're ready to win. And I think that those guys, I think it's been a long time coming that the highest, the best amateur players in the world through college, whatever it might be, they need to have a pathway to get on the tour sooner because it's going to bump out guys there are guys that play in the lower level events every week. We're excluding obviously the majors, the players, the elevated events, and these lower level events. You had Sanderson last week. If you look at the bottom of those fields, you've got some guys in there that have been totally irrelevant for a decade now. And they're playing on these weird exemptions from who they were 10 plus years ago. Golf is the only sport where that happens. You don't see in other sports where they're like, you know what, you were a great player 10 years ago, so you're going to start this weekend. Like, that doesn't happen. But in golf, like, what are we doing letting J.J. Henry still playing tour events?
The PGA Tour they have one of the smartest, essentially retirement programs out there. That's what the PGA Tour Champions is.
Even more of a reason why these guys should not, what are we doing giving these guys spots when you've got, these NCAA primo athletes that just have, oh, sorry, you got to go through the qualifying process. Yes, they should. And I don't think they should go straight to the tour, but finally getting them into these finals and getting them points through the PGA Tour earlier, I think it's a huge win.
Now, see, I have no problem with the entertainment value of a PGA Tour event, right? I like it. I've always liked the vibe on property. I've gone to a handful of different events around the country, and they're good. There's nothing bad about them. One thing I will give, but see, I realize that I'm locked in. I'm already, you and I are both addicted to the game. It's our profession. It's our life, a huge part of our lives. So, they're not necessarily chasing after us or, worried that we're going to start drifting off, right, to watch other stuff. But I will say, that's one area where LIV has taken a different tack. If you go to a LIV event, it is a different vibe. Not just the music thumping in the background or, the kind of the goofy games they have at the entrance and all that stuff. No, it's a different crowd. It's a totally different crowd. And they're bringing in a lot of folks who are more curious about the game. It's much younger. It's a much younger demographic walking around. So that's something that I think the tour should be leaning toward. So by bringing in these younger players, by pushing up some of college's best players, I think that helps speak to that generation. And we don't need some of those 48-year-old white guys who have been doing this for 25 years and have a pretty decent nest egg, thanks to Tiger. It's time to kind of move on, right? But their retirement program is just off the charts. It's so good, so good.
And I don't know. It seems like there's this argument or this underlying tone of some of those old crotchety guys, where it's like I've paid my dues and I've earned my way. Okay, yeah, you've kind of helped, I guess, build this tour in a way. But like, if you're no longer one of the best players in the world, if there are people better than you out there, what are we doing? Like, what? Now, I'm not talking, the top 50 players in the world are always going to be where they are. Like, these guys do not take anything away from your Rorys of the world. But why are we giving exemptions to some of these guys that it would be a great week if they just made the cut? Meanwhile, you got these kids that are just eager and have all the game in the world to get out there, actually be relevant right away. Like,
you got a former major champion, Jimmy Walker, who, awesome, right? Super guy. He's been doing this a long, long time. He went through, he still battles Lyme disease, right? So he went through this whole issue, this health issue. But he's a cat with 9 lives. He's got a bunch of exemptions that he's used, that he's built up, almost like timeouts in the NFL. Right. If only you could carry him over from the first half to the second half. That's basically what his situation is. And he made the comment a few weeks ago that he just doesn't understand these changes that are taking place, and by limiting these fields and reducing the number of qualified individuals down to 70 to guarantee your card for the following year, as opposed to 100 or 125 as it had been in the past. The fascinating thing there is, like, well, Jimmy, this isn't new, right? This isn't new news. Like, this has been discussed for well over a year now, and the problem is there is a workaround. And it is merit-based. Play better, and you're going to get in. And I understand that kind of sucks to hear sometimes. But the fact is, I don't have my PGA Tour card because I don't play well enough to earn my PGA Tour card, right? I sure could if I could go out there and shoot 64 every day. I can't do that.
And to act as if,
who can?
He seemed,
it was
his
a
comments
surprise.
were interesting, but I wish that somebody would ask him, Jimmy, do you understand how many people buy tickets to these events because you're in the field? Because the answer is nobody does that. Nobody shows up to a tour event because they're excited to watch Jimmy Walker, unless they're a friend of his, but he does not put the butts in the seats like the big timers are. So, like, I don't know. I don't think the tour owes you anything.
How do we pronounce that
We
one?
don't know yet.
Not sure.
I heard about 14 different pronunciations during the Ryder Cup.
I don't think he has.
No, but how about him playing in Jackson this week? Week after the Ryder Cup, probably still hung over from the celebrations.
A little bit, yep.
Speaking of sponsors exemptions, now, if you're the sponsor of an event and you get these exemptions, I believe you should be able to give them out to whoever you want. But it's kind of interesting. This week we've got Lexi Thompson playing in a men's event. Somewhat controversial, maybe. I say more power to her if she wants to try it.
Damn right.
Kind of wish it were. This obviously hasn't really been her best year. I'm not a huge Lexi fan. I don't really, she kind of dodges the media, and I can't quite figure her out. I think she could be great for American women's golf, and I wish that she were a little more open. But when she shanked that chip at the Solheim Cup a few weeks ago and was asked about it in the media center and said, I don't need to respond to that. That was a fair question to ask about it. Like, that was a pretty, like, the whole world saw that. It was, you hit a chip like a 30 handicap in a high pressure moment.
Yeah, I'd say that I've done that.
Give an honest answer there. Like, that doesn't do anything to, hashtag grow the game. Like,
I've given up a couple of Scotch points once or twice by doing that, but not on quite on that stage. She's the third Thompson in her family to play on the PGA Tour. How about that?
Fascinating.
Right?
Did not
With her
realize
two brothers,
that.
yeah. Just a side note, Jimmy Walker, not a dry eye in the house, but he's made $27.7 million in his career.
It's tough, Jim. It's tough that you have conditional status next year. But he doesn't
50
because he
can't come
also
fast enough, I guess.
has this exemption where, what is it, 500 made cuts or something like that?
He has
he's gonna
made
get on tour.
255 out of 411
But is it 500 starts?
events. Oh, yeah, he's got 411 starts.
Okay, so
so
what's
far.
the exemption?
He's
I
getting
remember
there.
reading somewhere that he still has an exemption.
We never said we're complete experts on everything, just so you know.
He has an exemption. It's the same way Duffner's still able to play in all these. So you're rewarding these veterans that obviously they still are better than 99% of the golfing world. But are they top 100 players in the world anymore? No, they're not. So let's get these other guys in there. Again, golf's the only sport that kind of protects guys based on what they did years ago.
Let's bring back the Duff.
Right? Talk about a guy who,
we should start that social media phase again.
Sure. Duffnering. Talk about a guy who was on top of the world and then he just couldn't figure out how to two-putt anymore.
Yeah, one at Oak Hill.
Speaking of putting, how about our boy Luke List last week?
Hold on, Jason's only won $28.2 million, just so you know.
It's rough.
It's tough. It's a tough life some of these guys have.
So we should just keep giving those guys exemptions in tournaments, you know, and they get their pensions. But Luke List, speaking of a guy who, we'll just call him the yips. Full-on putter yips. I don't think he's finished inside the top 160 in strokes gained putting in the last 8 seasons. And what better way to to break your winless drought than draining in, what, a 55-footer on the last? I think, you know, it was good. He was less likely to make it, I would argue, if he had about an 8-footer to win. But it's one of those that just frees you up. You just whack it, and it happened to go in. It's crazy. And now he's into, you know, everything next year. Good for him.
Yeah, he's certainly paid his dues, right? He's got a couple wins, obviously now. This was his second win. And he battled for a long time to get that first one. But, yeah, he's, again, another one. It's tough when you only earn $14 million in your career. Now, again,
these guys have good careers.
You know, those are, you know, the big check numbers, right? And everyone celebrates and all that stuff. And, okay, then, you know, Uncle Sam, you know, whacks it in half and all that stuff. But, I mean, it's still not too bad, right?
He's done quite all right.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, he's probably not, you know, taking trains, planes, and automobiles to get where he needs to go. You know, they do still make some comfy seats on United. You know, it's not too bad.
He's got to rough it, man.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, we've kind of touched base on a few things.
It's a light time in golf, but there's always going to be controversy. It'll be interesting to see how all the LIV golfers respond to this. I'm sure Bryson's going to have a horrible take, as usual, but I love the content that he puts out there, unintentionally so. I'm sure Twitter's already going crazy with all the LIV bots talking about how the OWGR needs to be abolished and all this. And I will say it's not a perfect system, but I don't know how you could argue that these guys should get world ranking points when there's no qualification process to get to the tour. That's my whole thing. If you just got a phone call from Yasser and he said you can come play on our tour, which would never happen to you, but there are guys on the tour, there were probably 10 of them that you had never heard of that when they were starting this thing up. How do you gauge?
If only I knew some things, some very important things, I might get that phone call, right? All right, friendly 5 on this one. Does Lexi make the cut this weekend? No.
It would be great if she did. I don't see it happening. But, man, I mean, I would be 100% in if she made it. I mean, I want her to play well. You remember when Annika played at Colonial, she talked about how it was a level of pressure that she had never experienced before. We're talking, like, it's not even arguable, the greatest female to ever play golf. And she did. I mean, she put up a good rally. But for her to talk about that pressure and knowing all these kind of mental demons that Lexi's struggled with, that she's been open about as well, I think it's going to be can't miss TV.
Highest finish by a female in a PGA Tour event?
Was that Michelle
Babe, no, not quite.
Babe
Zaharias.
Yes, I knew that.
33rd back in the 1940s, I think at the Phoenix Open, something like that. So that record's been standing for a long time.
The Babe.
Yep, she killed it. All right, I think that'll do it for us. Thanks for paying attention. If you're still awake. If not, let's go.
Cheers.